It's great that Ma'am Dane won. You probably didn't expect to hear a cry of joy from me about a communist winning the mayoral election in New York. And add to that the Democrats' victories in the gubernatorial elections in Virginia and New Jersey as well. In California, voters supported what's called Proposition 50, which will allow the Democrats to organize the 2026 elections in a certain way. So the state will not be represented by 43 Democrats and 9 Republicans, but by 50 Democrats, or at best 50 Democrats and maybe 2 Republicans. But, so to speak, maybe they'll manage to make all the representatives. I'm talking about the representatives in Congress, yes, in the House of Representatives, all Democratic. In the state of Virginia, they elected a Democratic Attorney General. But that's not the most important thing. The main thing is that not so long ago, he wrote on Twitter that the leader of the state's Republicans is a copy of Hitler and, well, someone else. And he suggested putting bullets in his head and in his children's heads, too. And one bullet didn't seem enough to him. So, well, the children, too, of course, so that people like him don't grow up anymore. Such a great idea. So when the Israelis bomb Gaza, he starts crying, tearing his hair out, and shouting, "What are they doing to the children of innocent Palestinians?" Exactly. And this Jay Jones, that's his name, becomes the state attorney general, who is supposed to be responsible by his position to maintain law and order. Well, he will support it, of course he will. And yet I say how great it is. Have I gone crazy? Well, of course it's not for me to judge, ladies and gentlemen, but you can only go crazy if you were sane before. But was I ever sane? That's a debatable question. Well, let me explain. And in the meantime, subscribe and click the bell. There you go. One of my favorite writers, along with Bulgakov and O. Henry, is of course Bashevis Singer. In several of his stories, there's a recurring theme. We thought something was terrible, but it led to something good, or we were so happy about something, but it ended up causing some problem, disaster, or something else. After reading his story about village boys, I think it was a Jewish village, if I remember correctly. Yes, in Poland, I believe. At summer's start, they went swimming. Now that summer was here, they planned to run and jump. One of them was Motel. I'm not sure if that was his name, but that's my impression and memory. He broke his leg. And that was right at the beginning of summer. Yes, it was absolutely terrible. A week later, recruits arrived and drafted all the village guys into the army except him. Of course, Motla was left behind. Because he couldn't move, no one came back from the war. I remember the impression from this story and another one where someone who came to Brooklyn from Czechoslovakia, he was a synagogue attendant, that's what he called himself, became a millionaire. The only reason was that he couldn't read or write in English. By the way, I often read this story from the stage later. It was called The Needle Merchant, or just Needle Merchant, probably Prodavets Igolok in Russian. I recommend finding it. It's brilliant, period. He's brilliant in general, and this is brilliant. So these stories made me think. The Holocaust, a tragedy for the Jewish people, occurred, to be continued. But as a result, the League of Nations allocated a small piece of land to the Jewish people where our ancestors lived, and it became the State of Israel. Let's take the next catastrophe after the Holocaust. Hamas kills, tortures, burns, rapes 1,200 Jews and takes several hundred into captivity. It's terrible, it's irreparable. As a result, Hamas is almost destroyed, Hezbollah has been pushed back, and Iran has lost its nuclear weapons. And for at least a decade, maybe even 2, it has been stopped. And possibly the renewed alliance of the Sunnis with Israel will lead to peace, at least for the foreseeable future in the Middle East. I've always said that Obama's victory over Hillary wasn't in the presidential race, but Obama's victory over Hillary in 2008. And the fact that he and not Hillary became president was an extraordinary stroke of luck for the country. If Hillary had come first, she would have slowly raised the temperature in the pot of water, and after her, the first black president would have come. Hooray, 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 just like they used to shout. That's what it was about. 16 years. Slowly moving toward collectivism and globalism, the United States of America would have turned into Western Europe, and then maybe into Venezuela or even East Germany. So we were terrified, but it turns out we were actually lucky. Or the fact that the Democrats managed to rig the election and kick Trump out of the White House. So all their media, lies, manipulations, we saw it as a tragedy, and we were right. And in the 4 years before that break, Trump assembled a team, developed a program, and understood what needed to be done. It seems you can't help but show mercy. And the Democrat got so much through criminal activity that even judges who were favored by the Democrats won't be able to get them out of trouble. So once again, they thought terribly, but it turns out to be something completely different. Man proposes, but God, as the saying goes, disposes. So let's figure out what exactly happened on November 4th across our vast country, the United States of America. The elections we were following took place in New York, New Jersey, and Virginia. What unites these geographic territories? And they are very democratic. That means they have been worked on for a long time and very thoroughly. They were shown Trump and the Republicans as hellspawn. Not only the central press, but also local media, public figures, athletes, and artists. Everyone was saying, do everything possible to stop this. Well, and they called it fascism, Nazism, trigonometry. In these areas, there are a lot more Democrats than Republicans. And in New York, there are 5.8 million Democrats and 2.8 million Republicans, and about 500,000 are independents or from some small parties and so on. So it's a sharply divided city. In Virginia and New Jersey, about 40% are Democrats, 25% Republicans, and 35% independents with no party affiliation, or they belong to minor parties. And in the state of Texas, by the way, a survey was conducted with the same number of people. Are IDs required to vote? Texas replied, of course they're needed. Have you lost your mind? Forget about those Democratic tricks. Democratic here refers to the Democratic Party, not democracy.
Our nation has become polarized into a red-blue standoff. The good news is there are more red states than blue ones. That's why for 4 years they've desperately tried to bring in millions of new voters through the southern border. They know they're in the minority on a national level. They know it. That's the big picture, so to speak, of what happened yesterday. The blue states have gone completely blue. And even more so. But if we take a closer look at the data, we'll see how the Republicans' weakness in the blue states actually spread almost like collateral damage to purple states like Pennsylvania and Georgia. Not only did Pennsylvania vote to keep all 3 of its liberal Supreme Court justices, but Democrats also won 2 seats on Georgia's Public Service Commission for the first time in decades. This is a position specific to Georgia, and it had been under Republican control for 2 decades. So we actually saw the consequences of yesterday spread beyond the borders of the blue states.
That is, the voting results showed that Democrats did not see anything in the actions of the Republican Party that would make them vote for that party. How, you may ask? Trump helped resolve conflicts between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and also with Thailand through peaceful negotiations. And, oh my God, how could I forget for a second? Okay, I'll remember. I'll say Cambodia. That's it. I remembered. Messed it up. Iran stopped a 30-year war in Africa and is making efforts to stop the war in Israel and Ukraine. The answer is already in the question. What does a farmer in Virginia care? about Africa, about Ukraine, and even about the former Union of Soviet Socialist Republics if he has his own problems at home. Inflation continues, everything is expensive, there are problems selling soybeans, and there's not enough money to buy a new tractor. People always vote with their pocket, their wallet. It doesn't matter, right? That is, with the economy. They vote based on economic reasons. And only one thing can outweigh that: danger. For example, millions of illegal immigrants posed a danger. First, crime was rising. Second, they were taking jobs. Third, doctor lines grew, schools were overcrowded, classes too big, education quality dropped, and crime increased. And the country started voting for a strong hand, someone who could neutralize this danger. After the borders closed and people thought the nightmare was over, they focused on their wallets again. And that's normal. That's normal. People don't think ahead or deeply. They think buses will be free. Well, cool, why not? They don't think about where Mamdani will get the money for this. Well, why should they think about that? Buses will be free? Yes. They hear that city stores will sell cheaper food. Cool, absolutely. But what happens when an enterprise is public and no one is personally interested? Well, has already happened in more than 70 countries or so. Well, over the last 100 years, even with the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Venezuela, and other places like Kazakhstan, they have no idea, and even if they did, no one ever taught them how to think. And most people themselves act on the level of, well, instinct and momentary desire, so to speak. Desire. It's like when your knee gets tapped, your leg jerks, you don't think about it. For example, if you're hungry, you eat, or someone takes something from another. It doesn't really matter who gets robbed in those colonies, right? Or even if they fleece their own bourgeois, well, they're bourgeois after all, they've been portrayed that way. As the bad guys, basically. Movies and television always portray rich people as bad. I want to be rich and still be good, but all the rich are shown as bad. The main thing is that it's us. So, well, there we'll get something that we couldn't get before, and now it will be free or cheap. Freebies, it's a sweet, sweet word. You might say, don't worry, it'll always be like this. Yeah, right. If someone is making everything cheaper, if someone is making life better, noticeably better, then why switch from one camp that's already doing well to another? People actually prefer a bird in the hand to, so to speak, a swan in the sky. Does this mean that the Republicans haven't shown, given, or organized that bird in the hand? Let's figure it out. And after that, I'll tell you why. I think we got lucky, just like with Obama's election in 2008. So that we were thrown into hot water, making us want to get out right away instead of slowly heating it up so we'd boil without noticing. Or Trump's loss in 2020 means we get the brilliant Trump 47, the brilliant Trump 47 ready to attack, to defend, ready to fundamentally reshape globalism and Obama's idiocy. There are the Soroses, the Clintons, and all the rest, the family of thieves named Biden. Then Trump 47 lip. It will be hard for the fascists. It will be hard to return the country to a dictatorship run by bureaucrats and thieves. That is a kind of Yakuza mixed with the nomenclatura, or the KGB merged with the mafia. Well, that's the Putin brand, by the way, and it seems that nowadays it's the same brand in Ukraine, too. Let's not mention any names. By the way, what does the White House think about the recent elections in New York and other blue states? Here's a tweet from Vance.
Secondly, we need to focus on the domestic front. Right. That's exactly what we're talking about. The president has done a lot which has already led to lower interest rates and inflation. But we inherited a disaster from Joe Biden, and Rome wasn't built in a day. We will continue to work to make a decent life accessible in this country. And that will be the criterion by which we will ultimately be judged in 2026 and beyond.
So we need to focus on what hurts Americans. Analysts are reacting as well. By the way, here's an accurate and well-done analysis.
Starting in the spring. Starting in the spring, selected Republicans sent a strong signal to voters, making it clear that they don't care about their interests or the interests of America. Attention was focused on each sponsor's project. Then they bombed Iran, even though 30% of Trump's own voters did not support it. At that time, this was a historically bad number for initial military actions. They continued to fund Ukraine and focused on every delusional project of their sponsors. People lost faith, and the anger we see now is a direct result of that voice. Spanish-speaking voters for Trump concluded that this is just Bush 2.0, and last night they returned to the Democrats en masse. The numbers in Pennsylvania and New Jersey are clear. Since those bombings, there has been no attention to the voters and their internal needs, despite all the warnings from people who know the voters and the coalition better. Maga?
It seems that I, gentleman, was right when I kept repeating tirelessly that a farmer from Iowa, a worker from Pennsylvania, and an auto shop owner in Georgia couldn't care less about Ukraine. It's the same for Zambia, Madagascar, Uganda, and Belarus. It's the same. Well, they care a little more about Israel, or maybe they do care about Israel. That's not their top priority. But nevertheless, it's kind of where their religion came from, their spirituality, some things that are important to them in that sense. That's why they have a slightly different attitude toward Israel. But still, when it comes to choosing between Israel and their family, their children, their lives, their well-being, their safety, they choose their own safety. And the idea that, after defeating Ukraine, Russia might attack Romania doesn't even cross their minds. Well, absolutely. What, Romania? To hell with that. I mean, do whatever needs to be done there just so that we're safe. But we're America. Americans, America first.
The good news is that, according to JD, the White House seems to have heard this message loud and clear. The point is, Tucker, especially as I see it, is concerned about exactly what Rich articulated so precisely earlier. MAGA is being taken over by donors and politicians. And the first victim of this appropriation is the marginalization and disenfranchisement of the very voters whom MAGA promised to represent and protect. That's all. So the civil wars we're seeing in the Republican Party between, Mark Levin, who, remember, was against Trump at one point. Okay, he's not the one who defines what Make America Great Again is. Sorry, he just isn't. So you look at these arguments between Levin and Tucker. None of this would be happening. Well, it might be happening, but of course. It wouldn't have reached this scale if Trump had focused only on America first. And putting America first means putting Americans first. Enough with the focus on foreign policy, enough with world tours, enough talk about Nobel Peace Prizes, enough with the Ukraine Fund, and threats to send them missiles to launch deep inside Russia. Enough with this crap, enough with military interventions in the Middle East, enough.
You understand that the Make America Great Again movement doesn't want to send soldiers, money, or missiles abroad. If someone is fighting somewhere in the world, why is it our business? If we're fighting here, then why is it the business of Ugandans? No, absolutely none for Madagascar's people. Yeah. How do we know who's right when they're fighting over there? And how? Are we sure that if we save someone over there, they won't turn out to be our enemy? Like it's happened many, many, many times before.
These aren't the kind of questions that inspire loyalty among dissatisfied, marginalized independent voters who gave the Republicans their biggest presidential victory in 2 generations. There's no way around it. All the inspiring speeches on Fox News, all those about why we need to intervene all over the world, how much more will they marginalize and disenfranchise the very voters who brought Trump to power?
Make America great again, meaning those very people who brought Trump to power. Everyone says enough with focusing on foreign affairs. If you don't take care of our issues, we won't go vote. Period. We won't vote for the other side. We just won't go vote at all. And I'm telling you this now. Then the Democrats will come back to power. I'm telling this to everyone who demands United States intervention in wars. That's the best way to bring the Democrats back to power. We'll fire rockets at the Russians, launch a couple of missiles at oil storage facilities and airfields. And what will we get, ladies and gentlemen? We'll get Mandalny, Kamala Harris, or Ocasio-Cortez in the White House. Well, I know Mandalny can't become president. He wasn't born here. But Ocasio-Cortez will definitely make him Secretary of State or maybe Secretary of Defense. Can you imagine that? Then go ahead if you want. Help for Ukraine, missiles, money. Why didn't Trump attack Russia? How dare he not supply Ukraine with weapons? All right, that's us. About those who, living in the United States or not, they judge without understanding anything about the political life of our country or the events they know nothing about. And now, finally, why I'm glad. About the blues, the victories of the blues, I mean the Democrats. Because we got a powerful warning and just in time. And who was warned? The one who is premunitus, primo, nidus premunitus, huh? He said, who is armed, meaning forewarned is forearmed, as the Romans said. In French, it's avere prémuni. So it seems, by the way, that what happened, thank God, happened just in time. You know, it's like a fever. It rises when the body has a reason, or, excuse me, when you have a runny nose, it means there's a problem. My close friend suddenly started itching all over his body, so much that he just rushed to the emergency room. It turned out to be a liver problem, and an urgent one at that. If it had itched just a little less, or not at all, he wouldn't have paid attention and wouldn't have known, and the disease could have become irreversible. And so, they caught it in time, thank God. Let's consider that Mamdani is like an itch. If this hadn't happened in Virginia, New Jersey, or New York, we wouldn't have known that we had a problem. We wouldn't have started the diagnostics, we wouldn't have known what the problem was, and we wouldn't have thought about how to solve it. Avri premuni, how? Again, as the French used to say, forewarned is forearmed. Well, it was translated from Latin, of course. Thank you, Mamdani, for being the fever, the rash, and the itch. And we realized that something had broken somewhere. Gentlemen, everywhere the Democrats have won now, they will also win in 2024. That is, Trump and the Republicans did not have a majority there. But nevertheless, this is a signal to all of us that for Americans, it's America first, not Congo, Venezuela, Poland, Cuba, or Dubai. And so, improving the lives of Americans is exactly what Trump and his entire team should focus on now. I'm not saying that the fight against China, Russia, Venezuela, or Iran should stop. What I'm saying is that the main effort should be focused on domestic policy and the lives of Americans. By the way, many of the results of Trump's efforts to attract investments, for example, should start to appear within a year or two after the investments begin. They've already started. There's already a noticeable decrease in unemployment and an increase in wages among workers, but the main effect is the growth of production and the construction of new enterprises. Well, let's say it will start somewhere in the middle or end of 1926. Well, and since April, 1,925 new universal tariffs have been in effect, which will probably give the budget $1 trillion a year in 1926. But they can add expenses, about $2,000 for a family of 4. Enterprises engaged in activities that substitute, as they say in Russia, Export-import substitution. Import substituting enterprises will also start operating by the end of 1926 and will not affect the midterm elections. Ladies and gentlemen, by 2027, a sharp increase in employment is expected in Transiarea. So there, instead of being a bureaucrat and just sitting around, go get a real job. And there will be wage growth and a partial replacement of imports with domestic goods. The wage growth will offset the expenses caused by tariffs. A combination of large investments and tariff protection will accelerate the development of American industry and infrastructure, which compared to Southeast Asia is at a primitive level. This should lead to a significant improvement in the standard of living for citizens, probably by mid-2027. That means the Democrats will do everything they can to prevent Americans' lives from improving in order to win the congressional elections. Well, they're most concerned about the House of Representatives, and for them, the main goal is to get a majority in the House of Congress. It's the country's wallet, and besides that, it can initiate endless perfect impeachments. So it's so that we wake up, come to our senses, and realize that, what? You can't catch a fish from the pond without effort. And a rash appeared named Mamdana. Mamdana Rash. Well then. Plus, let's hope that Trump or Liudnik, whoever their mastermind is coming up with something right now, so that at the beginning of 2026, Americans feel how their lives are improving, how their lives have improved, and realize that with the Republicans and Trump, things will keep getting better all the time. Then we won't have to worry about the elections in 2026 and after that. That's all. Goodbye. Yes. So I'm preparing another program. Later, in about 3 to 4 hours, there will be another video where I'll try to describe the short-term and long-term effects of Mamdani being elected mayor of New York, and, well, all the other elections too. So, ladies and gentlemen, double-check where you're getting what you're getting from, and know that there will be 2 programs on this topic today. Goodbye.